Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica and I'm your host, and you can follow me on Twitter at @ItchJessino. On today's show, we're going to be doing our final transfer window predictions. We kind of did some predictions early on in the window without any knowledge of anything that was going on. And now that we have a little bit more knowledge, not really, but we're just going to make our final predictions based on kind of what we know, what we've seen in preseason, the positions that we've already addressed, and the positions that have yet to be addressed. It's funny because it's such a slow news day, a really dead news day. Like there's literally nothing coming out. And usually I associate that with, that means that things are happening in the background, so we'll see what happens. I would imagine in the next couple of days, we'll hear some more information on maybe some midfield targets or something like that. But you never really know with Arsenal. We could go through the rest of the transfer window and they could be like, surprise, we were done after Ben White, but at the very least, I think we will see a backup goalkeeper come in. And I also did a poll on Twitter asking you guys if you could only bring in one more person or one additional position this summer, what would it be? And the choices were central midfield, creative midfield, and striker. And I think the majority of you guys said creative midfield. So that kind of just speaks to, I think, the fan base feeling as though we are still missing key positions within our squad. But then also at that as well, some people in the comment section were saying, look, we shouldn't have to choose. Like we should have know for sure we're going to go after more than just one player. Some people said right back as well. So I think we're all kind of hoping that we get multiple deals done. But as the window gets further and further along, I'm tempering my expectations just a little bit, just in case we don't get what we hope to get. You know what I mean? So there's about 62 of you guys watching right now. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Again, I had Sulz and George come up with some predictions. So we'll go through them. We'll talk about whether we think that those are going to happen or not. You guys can let us know in the chat box what you think. And you can also put some of your predictions in the chat box and we'll discuss them as well. And our predictions, these are not what we want to happen per se. This is what we think will happen based on what we know, which are two completely different things. Because obviously, if we're talking about what we want to happen, we're all talking about Haaland and Mbappe coming to Arsenal and just solidifying our future for the next 10 years, but that's clearly not what's going to happen, right? So let's keep them as realistic as possible based on what we know, which is very little, but still I think we can make some educated guesses. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started with the show. So I'm going to bring Sulz and George in. Hey, Sulz.
Hey, Jess, how you doing?
Good. Hey, George.
Hello.
In your lawyer chamber.
My lawyer chamber, exactly.
I know, that's it. From the storage closet to the lawyer chamber.
Look, we're moving on up slowly.
The glow up is amazing.
Jess finally paid me. So, guys, I got a decent background this time.
This is true. This is true. So, yeah, basically, in the lead up to all of this, it's been pretty much a dead news day. Nothing new has really come out. One thing that I thought was quite interesting that did kind of come out today was that Roma.
Try again in a few seconds.
Oh, that was Google. Apparently,
What was that?
it was a Google. I don't even know
They're
why.
watching us.
Yeah.
Whoa. But that Roma are now looking at alternatives for Granit Xhaka, which for me was one of the indicators that we're moving really close to him staying, because I was still kind of not really believing it, to be honest. I was like, well, 70-30, he'll go 70%, 30% stay. Now I'm kind of like switching it the other way. They're actively looking for other targets, one of them being the Coop, which is a little devastating, because personally I think he'd be a good fit for Arsenal, but are we starting to come around to the idea that Granit Xhaka might be a permanent fixture for the next season or two? And, how do you guys feel about it? George, I'll let you kind of talk about it first. Because we were big on the midfield starting the transfer window out, weren't we? We were Basuma FC, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, look, fixture in what sense? In a sense that he's in the squad? Absolutely. In terms of the starting 11, I still don't know. I always felt that this Granit Xhaka would be 1 year too soon. Was I ecstatic that it was potentially happening this summer? I thought, oh my God, this culture change is going to be even more than even I thought. I knew that we would have some big change in turnover, but to remove Granit Xhaka, I thought was emblematic of a huge culture change that was going to happen both in dressing room culture, but also just on the pitch. I did think it was going to be too soon, though, and I always felt that as a deep-lying playmaker, in terms of what Granit Xhaka is good at, there aren't many significantly better on the market for that profile. The issue I always had was that's not the type I want sitting next to Thomas Partey. And so for me, the plan was always to keep Granit, but as a squad option, and to keep him kind of within the squad in terms of, somebody who's always available, durable, and can carry that leadership role that clearly is an empty void in that dressing room. I was having this talk yesterday where we don't really have a franchise player, and not even just franchise, but a voice in the team that we can say, yeah, that's his team. And I think that's a problem. So for me, I thought Granit carries things that do well. How do I put this? He is very critical to the way that we play currently, but not to the way I want us to do going forward. And so there needs to be a bridge. I always felt with the Granit Xhaka he was going to stay. I felt like all the reason that he was leaving was much more on the player's end as opposed to Arteta's or even our plans as a transfer policy. The one thing that I do like is even prior to kind of Granit leaving, there were always links in the Athletic, and center mid was always a position that we wanted to get filled. And so what I took away from a lot of these links was I don't really know if Granit is necessarily leaving. Rather, I think there's 40 million pounds in addition to maybe a marquee signing that we have to play with. That's always what I took between the bids of Locatelli and even Neves. The numbers that were floating around were between 35 to 40 mil. So what I took is, look, this is the indirect measure of our pot. That's what I took. There's a Granit. I can't lie. I know people don't want to hear this, but him being in the squad is better for us. Him out of the squad weakens us as a team. I still don't think he's the one to take us forward, but for me, he's a crucial bridge to where I want to get to in midfield. And I do hope, and we'll probably get to the predictions later, but I think him staying, though, does leave the possibility for that center mid purchase to be something of a different profile. Because why would we get somebody in the same profile of Granit staying? I always felt that if Granit was to leave, that kind of reduced the likelihood that I would get my potential sitter or the P&P kind of sitter that me and Jess really like. So I think with him staying, that opens that possibility completely. And so, yeah, I'm really happy that he is staying. I'm just happy that he is a squad option. And again, him extending in that capacity, for me, is always good things. I just don't think he should be starting. That's always been the issue for me. So, yeah, fixture in the team, not in the starting 11.
Sulz, is there a world that we can imagine where Granit stays, even maybe Hector Bellerin stays, but we're still able to improve the team enough to actually move up the table and make some of our targets? Because that's a distinct possibility that there has to be some sort of place, that we can come to where even though we have these players that maybe the fan base is very desperate to remove from the squad, that we can still improve the team and still even to see some improvement, even though those players are still there. Can you imagine a world like that? Or is it just as simple as if Granit Xhaka and Bellerin are still at Arsenal Football Club playing games, we cannot improve.
Xhaka probably not so much, but Bellerin, yes. The reason why I say that is because I think with Xhaka, right, I'm one of those. I am very Xhaka out. Like I don't really want him in the squad. I understand why he needs to be there in terms of what he brings, the character he brings, the sort of leadership he brings. And the thing is, you can't lose too much of that all at once, because you lost David Luiz and then you lose Xhaka. They're the two prominent leaders, like vocal leaders that we have within the dressing room. And as much as I want Xhaka to go, I get the logic behind him staying. But like George said, I don't want him starting. I don't want him to be what we build our season around, because we've seen it. We've seen 5 seasons where he hasn't really done anything. And he's played majority of all of those seasons, and we haven't improved with him in there. When we've started to look better is when Partey's in there, when ESR is in there, is other players that when they're on the pitch is when we look good, not when Granit Xhaka's on the pitch. And I think he's one of those where I've said, you know what? He will be one of those players who, if he went to Roma, he would absolutely boss it, because that's his league. That's the style he needs. He needs a league where he's not going to get pressed so much, where it's not as physical, where he's got a bit of time to do what he wants to do. Whereas with Bellerin, I don't rate him since his injury. I think that's why I didn't want Lamptey. I was very against Lamptey coming in as well, because the question I kept asking and a lot of people kept avoiding is, I just think he's all pace, and it's pace recovery more than it is talent. And that's what I was afraid of. And now, obviously, if Lamptey does come back and he's playing, we'll see that this season, because he's had his injury. Now let's see if he loses that ounce of pace. Is he still the same player? Is he still as effective? But Bellerin, since his injury, I think it's just been a complete... And it's not his fault. Like, I get it. It's an injury. It happens to everyone. But it's one of those moments where we've got to come to the realization he's actually going to digress us. He's not going to progress us. So with Xhaka as a squad member, I can still see an element of, okay, we could move forward. But again, I need someone like a Basuma to come in, because we need a different profile. We need something different, because we've had that Partey, Xhaka. And for me personally, this is just a personal opinion, the best performance we had last season in midfield in terms of control, in terms of dominance, was when we played in Old Trafford, and that was Partey Elneny. And for me, that was probably one of the most secure midfield performances I've seen. Bruno locked off, Pogba was locked off, and I can't remember whether Fred or McTominay played, but it didn't really matter. But the midfield was locked off. They didn't really have the opportunities to get at us the way they normally are, and the way they're normally able to control it, especially Pogba. We know the quantity he has, but he had a hard time getting into the game. And I think that's part of where the issue is. We, as a team, I don't think... The problem is we've got too many gaps to the point where we can't... We're playing too many different... We're trying to play a system that doesn't suit someone, and it's like too many players don't suit a system because we've got too many different players, and we're trying to move forward from that, and we're trying to build a team that's cohesive, but it's going to take time, and that's part of the problem. Like, we're not a Chelsea where we're going to go splash a £250 million window, or even a City where even if we do smart business, we're not going to get enough done. And Xhaka staying, if it means we're going to go get that number 10, we're going to go get a right back, and maybe next summer when we can go and get an actual number 1 target, rather, because if let's just say Locatelli's our number 1 target, it's not looking like that's happening. But if, say, next season we can get our number 1 target, it won't be Locatelli, because he probably will be gone to Juventus or Arsenal, and something will happen. But it means we'll still get our number 1. Then I'm all for it, but it's a tough one because we've not seen it, and there's no evidence. It's just feelings. We're just going off of what we think could happen. Bellerin needs to go. He's a must go. Xhaka's more of a, okay, keep him, but don't start him.
They're definitely in different categories for me. Like, I think we tend to lump a bunch of players. We talked about this yesterday in the deadwood pile. There's different levels. Like, you know what I mean? There's players that we just need to move on immediately, like Kolasinac. Like, he's somebody that just, he literally has to go. Then there's players that are like running their deals down, or their deals are close to being, 1 year left. Somebody like Eddie Nketiah, and even like Reece Nelson. These are two players that haven't signed new contracts, so we have to move them on. And then you have people that are just there, that it just feels like it's their time to go. And Bellerin really fits in that category for me. Lacazette fits in multiple of those categories for me as well. So we have to wait and see what happens. But let's jump into some of these predictions here. Let me just make sure I'm at the beginning. So let's talk about this one. Both of you guys actually put this one out there, that Arsenal signed James Maddison from Leicester. So, what makes you think that, George? What makes you think we're going to get Maddison? I mean, a lot of the reports have come out that said, like, yes, there's a chance, but then there was also reports that, even maybe he was second guessing it. He's back in preseason with them. People are saying that he looks happy. So why would you think that he would be coming to Arsenal, by the end of the transfer window?
Well, very, very clearly, he is everything we need on and off the pitch. He is that franchise player. He is that man that will come in and he will own the team. And in terms of us needing a creative midfielder, that was top of the list that we didn't do from last summer. We know this was a priority for time. So the idea that we don't get a creative midfielder, I think, is absolute delusion from anybody in the fan base. We are getting one. It's the level of where you believe that we can go. And the evidence is very quite clear. A, we've targeted it last summer. B, that has continued to crop up continuously throughout transfer windows. And then C, after Ben White, we have distinct evidence that we are doing more signings. And if you really think that that Ben White was the marquee signing done at the beginning of the window, then I struggle to sympathize with that. So we are going to get a marquee signing. He is going to be more than Ben White. The issue is, what type of creative midfielder do you want in there? And for me, we've talked about it. James Maddison is the ideal candidate in terms of, again, we said on and off the pitch, but just in terms of system, what do we need right now? We need a creative machine, but we need a reference and attack. We've said this, that we lack players with the technical security in the front line to control the ball. We've shown that we're going to be a halfway defending team, right? We've got Partey to control the transitions. What's that other part of sustained attacking patterns that we keep talking about? Final third, technical security. You need a James Maddison type. What are the differences between maybe an Ødegaard and a Maddison? Well, it's really quite clear from watching a lot of the preseason that we're looking towards a pivot. We're not looking towards a three-man midfield. That seems to be extremely clear. So that creative midfield signing becomes less and less an Aouar or a Ødegaard, who are much more interior 8 players as opposed to a true number 10. And again, it's really kind of false, because our true number 10 is somebody that just participates in wide overloads on both sides. So it's not so much a chance creation method, but more so that technical security in the front line. But also, lastly, shots and efficiency. The one thing that you can kind of label at a James, he is output and efficiency personified. And that is something that we are missing right now. So in terms of what are the pieces and what are the logic for why it makes sense, I think it's really quite clear we get a creative midfielder. That's not up for debate. What is the level that we really go into? Well, for me, I've always said that it's much more of a 10 type as opposed to those interiors. Never felt that's the way we're going. And by the way, this last preseason game with the high line, how we operated both fullbacks, very, very clear to much more of a pivot type. And we are going back, which I'm ecstatic about, what I felt we would, which is much more of that invincible mold, where we do have ongoing fullbacks that are bombing on. We do have a midfield that wants to press and squeeze the space. What do you need in that? You need somebody that can take control and pop off shots, because I, again, look at what complements Emile Smith-Rowe best. And again, even in all these cameos, we've seen it, really that final killer ball and an instinct in front of goal is the one thing that we're really lacking right now in midfield. So yeah, in terms of a profile, James Maddison screams sense. He fits the under 24 profile that Arteta has been recruiting within league, leaders of their team, precipice players that are bubbling, waiting to be kind of superstars in their own sense. So I honestly don't see any roads other than James Maddison. It's actually not the one I'm worried about in any sense. It's really that extra 40 million that I'm worried about, because I've always felt we have James Maddison money plus 40 million. What is that 40 million buy? So for me, James Maddison is probably the easiest prediction. Ironically, I know people aren't very confident, but it is really the easiest prediction I see of this transfer window.
I think you're on mute.
Started that out so good too. Okay. So here's my question. Do you think shelling out 70 million on Maddison affects, a right back and center midfield signing, especially if we don't sell Bellerin and Granit? Sulz, what do you think?
I don't think it does, because the one thing Arsenal will guarantee you is a big marquee signing. We've seen the same things being said about Partey last season, or wow, whoever would have got done, it was the same stories coming out. Yeah, Partey's happy at Atletico, he's got Champions League football, they've got this development plan, Diego Simeone really rates the player, blah, blah, blah. He was happy being at Atletico. Maddison, on the other hand, you've got to look at the sort of Rodgers-Maddison sort of relationship. Yes, it might look good right now.
Oh, no, wait, I don't know if maybe I didn't phrase the question correctly. It's not, do you think we'll get Maddison? Do you think bringing in Maddison will affect our ability to bring in a right back and a central midfielder, especially if we don't sell?
No, because again, I think there's a marquee signing plus another signing. I think I don't know whether we'll get both. That's morely because I don't know whether we'll have the space for a right back. That's more of my concern, more than it is whether I think we want to get a right back in, but again, you can't have 5 or 6 right backs on your payroll. It's just not feasible. It's a bit stupid, especially when, let's be honest, right? Chambers could do a job till maybe January, and then we can think about, okay, what do we do now? But in terms of that centre mid, I think the way everything looks, the emphasis of the sort of interest is in that number 10 or that creative midfielder and that centre mid, or some along. They're the 2 key positions we keep hearing about. Ødegaard, Maddison keeps popping up. Locatelli comes up. Neves has been coming up. Basuma at the beginning of the window was coming up. So evidently, from the very beginning, the priority was always to bring a central midfielder in, and then about 2-3 weeks into the sort of window, we started to hear about the number 10. And the reason why I think there's not a lot of talk being happening, I think because I was watching actually the behind the scenes for one of the Ben White, sort of his first day at Arsenal, and you could hear Edu, they kind of cut it out, but you could hear Edu say, I kept this one quiet. And that was, he tried. I know a signing like that was always somehow going to come out, and there was always going to be little murmurs around it. But I think what they're trying to do is, because they know, Ruben Neves, for example, the Arsenal interest became publicly known and United jumped on it. And I think what they're trying to do is the next signing, or whoever their potential signing is going to be, they want to keep it quiet. They want to keep it very in-house, locked in, so that there is no outsider influence to what can happen. Because traditionally, when you look at Arsenal, we need a lot of moving parts to make our deals happen. We go all the way back to Aubameyang. We go even back to even Ozil. When we signed Ozil, it was the fact that Bale came into Real Madrid and the fact that Neymar came into Barcelona, and Real Madrid needed to make a marquee signing. So they allowed Ozil to go to bring that player in. And then when we look at the Alexis Sanchez move, it was similar. It was Barcelona bought a player in, they needed to offload Sanchez. And then it was always something affects our transfers. The Aubameyang one, it was Michy Batshuayi going to Borussia Dortmund, and then Olivier Giroud going to Chelsea. That allowed Aubameyang to come to Arsenal. But what we're trying to now do is break that mold, because we need to break it to be a top club, to be someone who's going to determine how the windows go. We can't wait for things to happen. Otherwise, it's going to be another situation where it's going to be a deadline signing. And what we're trying to do by breaking that mold is keep it all in-house, keep it quiet, and not reveal your true colours. I do think it's a lot of smoke screens, and it's just a lot of names being there so that you don't know who the true target is. So no one else can come in and hijack the deal, because let's be honest, we're not the most attractive. If a United comes in I'm not saying we can't convince them to join over United, but it's a bit difficult. Especially when you look at Champions League football, when you look at the likes of Bruno being there, when you look at Sancho's just gone there, Varane's just gone there. It's exciting for any young player to want to pick United at the moment over Arsenal because it's a promised land. It's not something that is, when you look at the big picture, it's not it's just, we hope this is going to happen. This is the plan. Whereas with United, I'm like, look, we've got Sancho, we've got Bruno, we've got Varane, we've got this player, we've got that player. They can actually show it you, like, this is what we're trying to do. So I'm confident the centre mid will happen, not the right back.
Agreed. I really don't think the right back is a confident purely from numbers. I mean, look, attacking midfielders a given, guys. Like, we don't have Ødegaard. Like, there's playing space within there. In fact, center mid, there's playing space within there. We got rid of a Ceballos. And so when I look at it, right back factually has 4, even 5 options at a push. Tavares can play there. And like, you're not doing it. I'm not saying to play him there. I don't want people to confuse that. But factually, you have 5 players on the books that are able to fill that spot. So I've always felt until you get rid of 2, and if you don't get rid of 2, then you don't get a right back. But 40 million plus a marquee pot has always been the money. We
can't forget also that we're actively trying to sign an expensive goalkeeper at the same time. Like, there has to be some money there. Like, so I don't disagree that there's money to be spent. I just don't know how much it is. And I have a hard time believing that some of that money that maybe they felt like they were going to have was going to come from some of the sales, but that's just me. You guys both said that you think James Maddison is going to come in, right?
But can I just say quickly, apparently there was rumours, well, there's rumours because I don't know how true it is, that Stan Kroenke, or one of the Kroenkes, is willing to put in £100 million to Arteta. But the only thing is I didn't get a chance to properly read the article because I was at work. So I don't know whether that was at the beginning of the window or that's now being injected into the plan now. So I don't know whether that's to help with the Maddison deal plus the midfielder. That would make sense with the £100 million projection of both of them coming in. But it's something interesting to say there.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Nobody really knows how much we have. I just think we have. Usually when we're skint, we know it because even like everybody comes out and says skint Arsenal. Clearly there's money there. We spent some of it on Ben White. We just have to see how much more there actually is. But you guys both said James Maddison would come into Arsenal, and clearly that's my first choice. That's who I would want. But for me, my prediction is that we bring in Martin Ødegaard, we bring him back. I do think that there's an opportunity to bring him. I think that's why everything is kind of stalled and why we're just waiting to see. These rumors won't go away. And I think I read this morning that Real Madrid now want to sell him, but they want to make sure that they insert a buyback clause. So, and I always thought that would probably be the most attractive offer for everybody involved, except
why
for
didn't
maybe
we complete Buendia then, by that logic, would you think? Because
they wanted to sell him, not a buyback.
Yeah, similar.
Real Madrid wants a buyback because essentially what this boils down to for me is Ødegaard wants to play somewhere else because he knows he needs to be playing, but he knows he's not going to get that position at Real Madrid. So the option is that you have a buyback clause inserted so Real Madrid can try to get him back when they freaking feel like it. And I think, with a lot of the players that we're bringing in now, they're mid to long-term opportunities. Like some of them, I feel they'll be with us for 2 or 3 seasons and move on because they're young enough to do that. Hopefully we feel like we could sell them on for however much. Like even Brighton has inserted a sell-on clause with us, so I think these are players that could stay for longer or just be, here to help us build until we get to the next level. So I personally feel Ødegaard comes in, but there's some sort of buyback clause for Real Madrid to bring him back in, and we have him for 2 to 3 seasons. He develops
buybacks are the first. They basically get the first right to take the player. If they then say no, then you can sell the player normally. So it's not, they can't just come in and go, oh, we want him back. So
it's when we decide we want to sell him.
I don't think we do that from an authority in the market standpoint, and I don't think
I think we would do it. I really do.
For Ødegaard, I think they would.
I don't think they would with Ødegaard.
I think that's the only way you get him. I think that's the only way you get Ødegaard. I don't think you get him. I think he's plan A.
He is.
I think he's plan A. I think that's why everything is just kind of. I think everything is hinged on whether or not we could bring that guy back. Like that's just
even
how
with overlapping fullbacks and what we've seen in preseason, with Partey a little bit more advanced in that right center mid spot. Don't you think we're going to clash?
I just feel as though it wasn't an issue before. I think Arteta likes Ødegaard, not just from the way that he plays, but I think he likes his personality. You know, I just have this weird feeling that he's number one, because if he wasn't, then why not just start negotiating for James Maddison and just get it over with? You know,
you also got to think about
a bigger deal. I think it's already happening, to be honest with you. I really, for me,
this is why I wanted to do this, because I knew we weren't going to agree.
Look, you know what it is? It's a formation thing for me. It really is, because I don't believe that is Arteta's plan from a formation issue, and that's why I've excluded interiors so much for me. That when you're looking at Saka and how you fit these guys in, there was a clear, distinct problem when we had Ødegaard and Saka in terms of the spaces that they occupied. And if you're going to be a halfway defending team, that space and that problem of that interchange is highlighted. It doesn't get reduced. And so for me, I've never felt that a three-man midfield is really the play this season. And if it was the play, we would have seen.
Have to play a three-man midfield with Ødegaard. No. I think you still play him in the 10.
You think you can play him in the 10?
No.
We've been playing him at the 10.
Yeah,
no, he's been as like an interior.
Has always said he wants to transition into a 4-3-3 anyway. So he will probably bring Ødegaard in. No, but Arteta, I do think he wants him as an interior 8 though, because he always has said
when we eventually move into it, he can obviously play in an 8 position, but right now we're using him as a 10. I don't understand why we couldn't use him.
I don't think we are using him as a 10, because when we have played him, it was much more in the West Ham scenario. That wasn't as a 10.
You guys, we know that when we're in game, things shift around. We know that. But technically, when we start, he is the 10. And that's the same thing for me that James Maddison would be doing, because he likes to play in the left half space.
But why isn't Awar being pursued then?
Because Awar's agent isn't. Oh.
Could be, but he's available.
I think Edu was put off.
So then
Edu was put off, man.
The logic for me has been, if it was an interior, and if we clearly are okay with clauses, why didn't we complete Buendia for a £35 million, where clearly the logic has been under 24 Prem proven players?
Because we probably didn't think Buendia was worth that. And it was never going to be 35 million, because Aston Villa was willing to get into a bidding war with us. Because
but Ødegaard is probably in a similar valuation standpoint, right? And so if we're looking at money and we're looking at somebody in a similar profile who's more proven in the league, who we know can do it, I really struggle why we wouldn't have completed Buendia if there was clear interest, and that was the plan A. That was really, again, why I was never believing the Buendia news, and the fact that we didn't complete it for me cemented we're not moving that way in this season, because I feel as though James Maddison is in the £65 million range, right? I think we can all agree, maybe 70, right? A Ødegaard and a Buendia is roughly 35. Add another Awar, that's 20, 25. For the same prices, you can get 2 interiors, which is one section of a tactic, or you can get a lone pivot like a James Maddison. They're very different philosophies. And for me, if the plan A was the interiors and to go there straight, there would be no debate about Willock. It wouldn't even be a debate. He is very clearly a free 8, and he would actually be a fixture in this team right away. He would have been integrated extremely quickly. Secondly, I feel as though you would have pressed the trigger on a Buendia, because a Buendia plus a Willock and then a Partey becomes very intriguing in terms of your preferred 3-man midfield, if that is something that you want to pursue. And the fact that we've had overlapping fullbacks further into this just supports for me. You can't really play those things in addition to not having one kind of fullback inverted. I wouldn't have seen that so soon. In fact, at Chelsea, I wouldn't have seen overlapping fullbacks if that was the plan A for me. So I really I really think that this pivot is here to stay. The reason that we haven't done something like an Aouar, despite his agent being difficult, the money and Leon want him to go. And if that was the play, the left side is the kind of gap in creativity, not so much the right.
Yeah, but
and we would have got
do
that.
well with difficult agents. We've never, even when Leon is difficult, we've not dealt well with them. That's part of the issue.
It's a cheap deal, though, Sulz.
Yeah,
it's a cheap deal.
It's a cheap deal.
No, but it's a cheap deal. What if the agent's
if you have to pay his agent?
Sure, add another 10 million. It's still a very cheap deal because we have.
But maybe we always talk on the show also about soft factors as well, like the difference between Aouar and Ødegaard in terms of mentality is completely different as well. Maybe Arteta just likes Ødegaard, the guy, the mind. He has a very high ceiling. Like, I don't know. I feel this is the play. And I agree that Maddison is the better pick. But do we always believe that Arsenal is going to pick the best or what we assume is the best? They're going to pick what's best for them. And we actually don't know what they're thinking. So for me, I just feel Ødegaard is the play, even though I prefer Maddison. I think we all made really good points. Like, I can completely see what you're saying about Buendia and just pulling the trigger on that if it's quite similar of a deal. So I understand that. But you guys in the chat box, let us know. Do you agree more with George? Do you agree more with me? Do you think it's Ødegaard? He's the player. Maddison is the long-term play. And some people in the chat were asking, can we get Maddison done by Brentford? No. If Maddison comes in, it's going to be beyond the last day of the window. It's going to be one of those that goes to the very end, I believe. So there's definitely that as well. But I think Ødegaard would be exactly the same. I don't think anything in what Real Madrid is saying makes me believe that this would be put the bid in today and get Ødegaard in the next 2 weeks. I don't see it, so we'll see how things play out, but definitely a difference of opinion there. I like that. So let's talk about Lacazette. Sulz, you said Lacazette would stay, right?
Yeah.
And George, what did you think about that?
Unfortunately, you
think he'll stay?
Yeah, the wages are an issue for me. I don't know who's paying 180K a week for Lacazette, this Lacazette, and not even this one, but what future do you have with a Lacazette when you pay him? He's 30, 31, 180K a week, even if he took a pay cut, which no one seems to be willing to do on these wages, like no one. I just don't see it, unfortunately, and it's too bad because I wanted him gone so that Bala could take his minutes, but unfortunately, I don't think that there's a market for him.
What do you think, Sulz? You clearly predicted that Lacazette will stay. If he does stay, would you be upset by that? Knowing that we are, I think it's just a more complicated situation with our strikers, with both of them still here. I know you're a huge Aubameyang guy, like that's your guy. So obviously you back Aubameyang, but having Lacazette there does complicate things, especially if you don't bring in the right 10 to make sure that Lacazette doesn't have to bear the burden of being our creative beacon in the center of the field. So what do you think, Sulz? What do you think about Lacazette staying, and how does that make you feel if he does stay?
Yeah, this takes me back to what Wenger said about 10 years ago, I believe it is, where he said you're going to start to see a lot more free transfers happen just due to the nature of player power. And we're starting to see that happen, not just at Arsenal, but we're going to start seeing that just generally happen more. Now, from a Lacazette perspective, he can stay this season. He knows he's going to get the minutes, but he's not going to get the wages if he takes the move now. What he knows for a fact is, I know the rumoured number is 12 to 15 million pounds is what the evaluation and what clubs need to pay. If Atletico are willing to pay 12 million pounds, what they're going to end up doing is that's going to then go on to his sort of sign-on bonuses, that's going to go on to his agent fees, or it's just going to end up adding on to his sort of weekly wages, because there is no transfer fee associated to bringing in a Lacazette. So I think Lacazette's just going to refuse everything unless he gets like a £250,000 per week contract, which with a transfer fee or a transfer happening, I highly doubt anyone's going to pay that, because I'm not saying Lacazette's a bad player or he's been bad, because he has been good, but he's not been amazing. Do you know what I mean? He's been okay. Like,
14 league goals is his max.
No. But what I'm saying is like he's like Firmino, isn't it? Like Firmino isn't amazing for a striker, but what he is a very specific type of player. And the problem you have with that is
the Firmino comparison as well.
I hate it as well.
No, I'm just saying they're not.
He's the profile. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
He's the profile.
Yeah, they're just not goal scorers. They just
Yeah.
they kind of bring people into play, and it's not what we need. We need someone to score goals because Aubameyang's decided to leave his shooting boots at home. But I won't get onto that. But you know, it's one of those where when you've got a year left, it's just the most logical thing to do is not take the move because you're gonna get. And I think clubs have probably said to him, yeah, don't accept our contract. We'll end up giving you what we're going to give these clubs anyway. So just take it next year and we'll give you a hell of a sign-on bonus and we'll increase your wages because we don't have to worry about a transfer. So I reckon that's what's happening here. And it's the same with Willian. The reason why Willian can't get that move is because he costs too much for wages. And then on top, I know it's only £5 or £10 million we're asking for, but the buying clubs are just thinking, well, why would we pay that when in a season or two we can just get him for free? So it's the same logic. It's just higher wages, and I think it's player power rather than club power right now.
Let's talk, guys. Let's talk, and then we'll get into my prediction, in just a second. But I'm gonna just put out the comment. You guys make sure. So I'm putting in questions in the chat box so you guys can let us know what you think. But basically, my question is, Arsenal rejected a $15 million plus. There was $15 million plus add-ons. So if certain things were met, it would become more, right? $15 million bid from AS Roma last summer for Lacazette. Was that a mistake? I thought it was a mistake at the time. I've always felt that we were never going to get more than $15 million for Lacazette in the current state that he is in. At his age, contract length, the fact that you're only going to get about 15 goals from him, if that, so this is again going back into, can we not see that there is a time to sell a player? If you don't have Lacazette, I get that, maybe last season would have been different, but you never know who would have stepped up in his absence, right? Somebody would have stepped up and maybe scored those 15 goals that he gave us, right? But now we're in a position where we probably have an opportunity based on how much money we have to bring in a better striker. All of you guys are like, not all of you guys, but a lot of people are dreaming of the Lautaro Martinez type players of the world. George, I know you don't like them, but you know what I mean? Like some of them, like we want something bigger and better, but there's somebody actively blocking us from being able to make moves because we weren't smart enough to just go ahead and pull the trigger. And now we're looking at a circumstance where, letting him run his deal down. We're talking about soft factors like his leadership and all this kind of stuff. But really, we're talking about Lacazette, who gives us 15 goals a season, right?
Well, at his best, he doesn't.
At his best.
14.
Yeah.
But so the thing with Lacazette that I get really frustrated with was, look, hindsight is a beautiful thing in terms of what you may believe you may get. I felt that a sale of a Lacazette would facilitate a change in formation. That was my issue with it. I've never felt that you keep players that you have in the squad already. The Balogun issue, that contract gets sorted much quicker if Lacazette is sold. That progression into the first team that should have been done a year ago happens a lot sooner. When you have an Eddie Nketiah, and by the way, a year ago, what made me even more frustrated is the Aubameyang that we had was much different. In terms of, again, hindsight is beautiful because no one would have predicted at the end of that season that, Oba would have the type of season he did have, right? So in reality, though, it was actually kind of good we had a Lacazette. If we had sold him, looking back, hindsight, that it was nice to have that option. But again, I was more pissed that we blocked a youngster's path once again when we already had that type of profile. So when I do look at it, I agree with Iffy. Our strikers minimum should be getting 20 plus a season. And by the way, Oba had done that for 5 seasons previously on the trot. Lacazette, I'm sorry, maybe it's an agenda, but he's never been good enough for me. Evidence with Wenger.
Agendas.
And it can't be an agenda when it's facts in it.
Look, he has never achieved more than 14 league goals in an Arsenal side that had Ozil, Cazorla. He had never reached the heights at a £50 million signing. He was a horrendous.
With those facts.
He was a horrendous deal. Oba should have been done a year before. There was interest when we had kind of the idea of pairing him with a Mesut Ozil. We realized our mistake and replaced him within 6 months. That should tell you everything. And fundamentally, any time that you did get a bid for him, he should have been sold. It was a crutch but I actually would agree with you. I would critique the club on this because I was very vocal about selling Lacazette, even though the sum was paltry. It really was. But for me, the change to a formation was absolutely necessary, and he blocked that. Keeping him was redundant on way too many fronts.
Yeah,
but you know what I want to say?
Go ahead, Sulz.
Like, the red flags were before he signed. His goal record in Ligue 1 wasn't actually that impressive, considering it's an inferior league. Like, he has more appearances than goals, and it's drastically different. And when he came, the fan base was 50-50 whether they actually thought he'd be a good signing. And the thing is, you've got to also realize that. And look, I'm not saying international football should really put a picture on where you are, but if he was £50 million good, how did Olivier Giroud keep him out? Like, and I know that's kind of an unfair comparison, like in some people's eyes, but like he didn't even get a look in for the French team, like not once, and that should be telling you something. And before people say, yeah, but Benzema didn't get a look into, but that was more of a, I don't want to get into it, but that was more allegations against him more than it was his ability to play football. But so to be fair, I heard it was 25 million that we were getting, or 20, unless that's the add-on thing, like we were getting 10 million in add-ons or something. But that was the biggest mistake we made. Like, it is a horrendous mistake. Not even hindsight. We should have got rid of him. Forget about hindsight.
That's what a lot of people are saying, hindsight, but I'm like, no, to me, it's not hindsight. Like, he's actively blocking people from being able to step into that position. And we, George said, we have a redundancy.
In hindsight, that's someone where you can go, all right, in hindsight, we should maybe not have extended.
That's such a good example.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's like where hindsight's like, okay. But Aubameyang was banging goals. He had just won it. And the thing is, don't forget, he won us the FA Cup. Like, it was his individual brilliances in that final third that won us the FA Cup. So you could understand the logic of extending that contract. Yes, there were some people saying we should have sold Aubameyang as well, but it was one of those, we didn't see the decline being this big. But Lacazette, the thing is, he's still yet to fire for us. He's getting mid-table numbers. You associate, if, no disrespect, by the way, because I rate this player, but if Ollie Watkins is getting, sort of 14, 15 goals, you're like, all right, fair enough. Because he's a mid-table player. No offense to Villa, because I do think they're doing brilliant business and stuff, but they are, in a sense of, if you just look at Villa, you're like, all right, mid-table, like 10th to 8th is probably what they're going to get. So that's the numbers you associate to them clubs, not to Arsenal Football Club, who should be competing for top 4. And not when you've got the likes of when you came in Ozil, Cazorla, when you've got creative madness, even Sanchez was there for a season. And when you then look at that, when you've got that core and you're still not firing, it's a bit of a, well, what are you going to offer us? You're the striker that in this system needs to be scoring goals. And I think it was Chelsea friendly. I think George sent a video. He was deeper than any other player. And it was like, I'm like, what are you like?
He's behind the halfway line in the regista position. Like, that's not even an exaggeration. He's behind the halfway line on a counterattack. It's you know what I will do? Really simple. Look, maybe it is agenda, maybe it isn't. But in kind of Lacazette's best season, okay, he's never achieved more than 14 goals. Aubameyang in his worst season has got 13 goals and assists. Lacazette in one of his better seasons in front of goal has goals and assists the past season. Like, the numbers are not comparable here. Like, the best versus the worst right now are not comparable. And for 50 million pounds, by the way, I might add, that happened 4 or 5 years ago. Do you know how much money that was at the time as well, in terms of what we were thinking that we were buying? And again, when a club replaces you as a signing 6 months later for more amount of money, I don't think that sends the best message in terms of your competency at the club. So great guy, great leadership, but he wasn't the pick for us. And I understand that there's two schools of thought, and I understand that there are those that appreciate a false nine and like wing forwards. I get there are those that like that system, and there are those like myself that prefer more of a channel runner striker. But I don't think that's the debate. Fundamentally, if you're looking at your false nine, I can recommend many false nines that I love above a Lacazette who would perform at a better role. I think we have to be honest with ourselves. He's never met expectations that his price tag has deserved. And that could be a fault of many things, but fundamentally, he hasn't produced. And I think that's a fair critique.
Can I just say that so now this is why I think it's important to bring this kind of stuff up as well. Like Seawalder says, Laka is my first choice currently. Tawanda says Lacazette's link-up play is needed. That's because we're trying, like, if he's not there, we're not saying these things. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's only an option, and he's only an option in comparison to Aubameyang because he's actually here. And in the absence of a legitimate number 10 that we need to be able to bring in. Does that make sense? You no longer need Lacazette's link-up play if we do what we're supposed to do in this window. And if he's also not here, then you can easily bring in another striker if that's what you really want to do. So I get that we feel, and also it's the coach's job to get the most out of your players. So Arteta put together a system that was as functional as possible, trying to get the people in the team that are sucking up the most wages. At the beginning of last season, he made sure that he played Lacazette, Aubameyang, and Willian, 3 players together that are probably getting 750 grand a week all together. He's trying to get the most bang out of our buck. So you see Lacazette, Aubameyang looks like crap, and then you're like, okay, well, Lacazette fits the system better, which I do agree. But would I prefer Lacazette to be at AS Roma? Yes. And would I prefer a number 10 to do the job that he's doing at the moment? Yes. And would I prefer to be able to bring in a striker? Probably. So yes, he is better option now. And we're saying, well, he's the best at this now. So that's a good reason why we didn't sell him. There is no good reason why we didn't sell him, because the only option was to sell him at that point, and we made a mistake. I firmly believe that. You know what I mean? So but let's move on to our next prediction. So my prediction is actually, because you guys said Lacazette will stay, I think Lacazette goes and Tammy Abraham replaces him. I do. I know that we've spoken about the wages. I think there's something in the pipeline that's making the club think that they could potentially get rid of Lacazette, because this entire window, we've been linked with strikers. Isak, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Andre Silva, Lautaro Martinez, and Tammy Abraham. There's reports that have come out that Tammy Abraham wants to come to Arsenal, even Chelsea's trying to bring the price down. I think by the end of the window, Tammy Abraham is an Arsenal player. Lacazette is off in the ether somewhere at somebody else's club, sucking up their wages. And, we see what happens there. Now, when I did my poll earlier, the funniest thing is that people were saying, I want it to be a striker. So I did a poll earlier where I said, what's most important? Striker, creative midfielder, and central midfielder. And some people in the comments were saying, well, if it's Lautaro Martinez, I want the striker. If it's Tammy, I don't. Which is hilarious, right? So depending on who it is, we prefer to have this player, right?
My goodness, that's another pod.
Something tells me that Tammy Abraham becomes our striker, and we have a plethora of new issues trying to figure out how to combine Tammy Abraham and Aubameyang and Saka all together in a front line. And we can talk about that on September 1st when it happens. I believe it happens, you guys. I do. So let's go into one of your guys' next predictions. I saw something about Ainsley Maitland-Niles is sold to Burnley. George, what makes you think that?
Well,
Burnley.
So why? Because Ainsley is absolutely hell-bent on playing center mid. And it's one of the teams that I actually think would be like, okay, sure, we can do that. I think Ainsley goes. I've long felt that he will go. For me, I think a decision has to be made. I think it's very clear that he's looking for a move away, and his inability to really become a fixture within the setup, kind of in preseason, kind of is backed up that he's one of the sellable ones. And he also has played in midfield, so I think that's been made quite clear. And look, like, mate, if you're the one that is demanding, it's your career. I think it's so wrong. I think he's listening to the wrong people, or whatever you want to call it. But I think he's made his decision. And so then I started looking kind of throughout the clubs that would be willing to kind of West Brom him in a way and satisfy his demands, because really he'd be great in a swap deal with James Maddison. If you really think about it as like a right winger, they would be great for Leicester, who are looking for a right winger, and are clearly moving towards a 4-4-2. Like it makes all the sense in the world for even a Reece Nelson or somebody to be used in that deal. But for me, just unfortunately, I feel as though Ainsley, I've seen some links to him to Burnley too. It's not totally out of the air. I'm not going to magic ball George. Well. There are links to him to go to Burnley, but I also just think it's way more feasible than Palace or otherwhere, where I don't think he gets the same freedom to play in midfield at a Palace. He will get that at Burnley, because I do think the way that they defend in a low block, he would be able to do a job in midfield for them.
They played in a 4-4-2 as well, I think, which would suit him a little bit better, right?
They do. And the way that they do that 4-4-2 with their center mids, it does suit him being a little bit more deeper. Whereas at Leicester, I think their 4-4-2 has a little bit more box-to-box, as much in the mold of a Samare Cry. And so I think for them, he would be more of a wing option. Like, they see him much more on the wing. Whereas a Burnley would be okay to kind of do that in midfield. So I do think Ainsley is sold. And he's one out of the two that we need for that right back signing. So call it hope. But I do think it's very feasible that we see him gone, and he's gone to Burnley.
Let me get to these super chats, you guys. Henry M says, Laka replaced Giroud. Can you compare Giroud and Laka during their times at Arsenal? I mean, it's difficult to compare them, because what was the expectation of both? One cost us 50 and the other one cost us like 8. How much did Giroud cost? He was
I have an agenda against Giroud because it cost my boy the assist record. So
Giroud is going to have the greatest legacy competition of goals, by the way, like in terms of compilations of the goals he's scored.
Well, he only scores bangers. He never scores like a small tap-in. Like,
absolutely. And look, Giroud, I had this debate on the timeline. He aged with like fine wine. He did get better as he grew older. But the fundamental thing was he was just never a plan A for a top 6 club. But we knew that because we never bought him to be. He was one of that summer where he was with Podolski, and he that kind of churn, if people remember, of transfers. And so we did it to replace kind of, losing our talisman, and it was not fun. I don't want to say his name. He really upset me. But when we brought him in, he wasn't brought for that reason, whereas Lacazette was brought in to lead the line. So the expectations were, I actually believe Giroud had always exceeded expectations, but our club gave him unduly the expectation to lead the line. And that was a mistake from us, more so than on him. And I think he's made the most out of his career. And I really do defend Giroud, because if you look at those goal tallies from France, those are some big numbers who he's with. And regardless of what you think of that man, I really think he squeezed every ounce of career that he could for his ability. I was okay with understanding he was never the one. But to say that he was crap for Arsenal, I struggle with.
He wasn't.
And he wasn't. But he certainly wasn't what we needed. And that's not on him. That's on us, forcing him to be.
We have another super chat here from Wayne saying, are you serious? You want to sell Lacazette and buy Tammy Abraham? Get the F out of here. Talk about mistakes, a lesser version of Welbeck. Oh, God. Well, I think, Wayne, what you probably missed, respectfully, is how the game worked. I never said that this is what I want to happen. This is what we were predicting. So a prediction and a want are two different things. Like, I can predict that something is going to happen, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's my want and desire. Like, you know what I mean? So respectfully, thank you for your super chat, but that's so not what's happening here. So I don't think anybody's saying like we really want Tammy Abraham. What I will say is I think the fan base is overreacting to Tammy Abraham and making him seem like we do this, right? Based on the fact that we've been burned in the past by Chelsea rejects, we decide that this is exactly the same thing. And because he's potentially going to leave Chelsea, that means that he's dead wood and we shouldn't be bringing him in. But statistically, he makes a lot of sense. He doesn't really meet the eye test. Like, he's not graceful. He's not your normal Arsenal center forward that you're really looking for. And I don't think he takes you to the top four. I think he's somebody that will improve you, but inevitably you'll need to bring in somebody else or hope that your Martinelli becomes that world-class striker that you believe that he is in order to take us to the mountaintop. So I think we tend to do this thing where when we really don't like somebody, we make them a lot worse than they actually are. But I personally do think that he would improve us. How much? That really depends on who's around him. And so it's yet to be determined. But I do believe he comes to Arsenal Football Club. I do think that there's legs to it. George, did you want to say something?
Really quickly, just for the Giroud and Alexander Lacazette, and it's going to sound like I'm hammering Lacazette, but factly, I hope people understand that, in Alexander Lacazette's best season, he received 14 league goals, and in 4 seasons with us, with Olivier Giroud, he got more than that in, I think it was 4 out of the 5 seasons he's been with us in the league. In the league, he bettered Lacazette's best goal tally. So if you're comparing them, there really is no comparison. Olivier Giroud was much better for Arsenal than Alexander Lacazette has been. It's just that should just show you on pure number. And we haven't even included what they've done outside of the team, by the way. They both did a lot of work for the team in terms of holding the ball up, contributing in midfield, linking play. So I don't want to hear those arguments, but it's unfortunate, but those are the facts.
George, you said Arsenal will buy Onana and Basuma to the end of the window.
Yeah.
Now, I have to say, we so disagree on this. Like, you think Onana's still coming. I think that's dead in the water, but the floor is yours, my friend.
Well, I've always felt that Andre Onana was a Kieran Tierney 2.0. I said it when we were first linked. Don't expect this one to go through. I think a goalkeeper is absolutely coming. I think the links to a goalkeeper were actually really kind of from the BBC of Dutch newspaper. This link that we got wasn't a flimsy link. It was absolutely somebody that we were very interested in, and we would never pay wages for somebody that wasn't going to be able to train really until September. Like, he factually wasn't. So the idea that we would pay him to do nothing was never on board. So I always felt if we're going to get a backup keeper, by the way, Onana would only be something like 8 to 10 million pounds. And it makes sense that nobody has really bit the bullet yet, because it's not only that, he's somebody that isn't here for a large portion of the season. So now that we know that Leno isn't leaving, it is kind of us buying a backup keeper, not a replacement for Leno. And so when I look at the backup keepers, Arthur Okonkwo doesn't enforce me for that keeper to be homegrown. So I've always felt that Andre Onana is very much the one in play, and we won't complete that until kind of the end of the window. I've never felt that was going to be a quick purchase. And he fills that hole in the squad that we clearly seem to be looking at. In terms of Basuma, I'm doubling down because I've said it since the beginning of the window. I really feel as though center mid is the area of surgery that this team needs. The fact that Granit Xhaka is staying, I've always said that we have 40 million pounds plus a marquee. That is very clear, I think, in terms of our bids. And I don't think that can be debated from the amount of money. And so then I start looking. If I have 5 right backs, I've kind of come accustomed to, until 2 leave, I'm not opening that as a possibility. So the next logical hole for me is center mid. And if you already have your deep lying playmaker and you've got 40 million, where is that going? It's going towards a sitting type. And when you do have Granit Xhaka staying, you no longer have the fear of an AFCON. And so you can afford to buy a Basuma. It doesn't make sense then that if not only Basuma and Xhaka was leaving, we would be light. And so for me, if you are looking at these holes, I absolutely see him as the perfect foil to, again, James Maddison. So if I really feel that James Maddison is the play, in order to support that type of number 10 that's going to be coming in, it has to be a sitting midfielder. So, if I do look at those total numbers, by the way, the funds match up. I think Basuma would be nothing more than 35 to 40 million pounds. Onana would be probably 5 to 8 million pounds. And that's 45, 48 million pounds plus a marquee signing. And I think that's always been the case, especially with a 40 million pound bid for Locatelli that has very clearly come out of Sassuolo CEO's kind of lips. So I believe the money's there. and I'm going to stick to my guns in terms of my belief on how Arteta views this team formation-wise.
Sulz, what do you think about this?
I'd love it to happen, but I don't know. The thing is, it's not even about the whole, he's going to be banned till February, or because of the AFCON, he's not going to be back till February. It's none of that. I think the thing is, it's weird because the talks died, like completely dead in the waters. Like no one's reporting it. It's more he's likely to go to Lyon than he is to come to Arsenal right now. So it's just a bit of a, I don't know, or if Ramsdale is just more of a smoke screen just to make sure that we can get our play. I hope he is. If it is, man, I am Arteta out. I'm Edu out, because I'll be like, what?
Another link, by the way, Sulz. That's a £35 million valuation. I think that is key.
Yeah.
It's 35 to 40 plus a marquee in funds. It's factually, we have those links, right?
That's the thing. Like, I do think the money's there because, like I said, there's reports that apparently Kroenke's putting £100 million in just to make sure. Because the thing is, I do believe at the bare minimum, we're getting a marquee signing. At the very minimum, like, I don't think they could end the window with the fans being back in the stadiums, with all the protests that happened beforehand, without giving us one big signing. And then what I think will happen is I don't think we'll end up splashing the cash on Ramsdale. I think that's what they want, but that's not what we're willing to pay. It looks like we're more willing to pay like the £15 million mark.
It has to be 20
and
lower.
Like that's the max we're paying for a backup. So I think it's one of two things could happen. I think if Onana is still available and it's coming to the end of the window,
why hasn't it been done? Do you think, Sulz? Because he's cheap, and in terms of if Lyon was to do it, and I've always said this to fan, everyone kept throwing the links that Lyon are interested at me, and I did say this, if it was so cheap, why not do it earlier in the window? They have the funds for it. They have the wage structure for it. It's a cheap enough deal that if that's their plan A, why isn't it done? And I've always said it's because I feel Onana has a priority of Arsenal, and we would never put in the bid while he is suspended. And I always said if we did have it, it's going to be at the end of the window like a Kieran Tierney 2.0, where we always knew it was going to happen, but it's going to complete it right at the very end to save on wages.
Well, you guys know how I feel about this. Until Leno is gone, I don't see us bringing in another number one caliber type player. I think we're looking for a number two, and I don't think Onana is that. So, but this is an interesting comment.
No, but he would come in to back up Leno, like it's Arsenal football.
How can he back up Leno when
because he's missing 35% of the season? Because he's missing factually 35% of the season. You can't demand number one status with only like 70% of the season that you're available.
I mean, he can play if he wants when he's back because the season's kind of done at that point.
I think that makes it really messy if you bring him in now, or you buy him now, or you try to solidify something at the moment, and Leno is still here, and he's not. We still need to bring in another number two. Like, I just think I think it's really messy. If he were to stay, and then we were able to acquire him in the January transfer window, then maybe if Leno was going, that would make sense. But as long as Leno is in my face, I can't see it. But Usopp says, so do you buy Basuma to be a backup? We all know Xhaka staying means he's starting. I tend to agree with Usopp that if Xhaka's there, he starts every single game that he's fit, which is every single game. And the rotational person is going to be Thomas, Lokonga, or El Nene, whoever's available.
Well, really, really quickly, it's a formation issue. Once again, if we are playing a halfway line defending team, okay, Granit Xhaka kind of then becomes useless with a Gabriel, particularly in build-up. How we've been doing it in terms of kind of being 10 to 15 yards behind in the pitch. Granit Xhaka did great in order to cover an on-rushing Kieran Tierney, but if that's no longer the case, and you've now got White and you've got pace and technical security in the back line, and we're now defending from the halfway line, that Gabriel and that Granit Xhaka kind of zone will be kind of much of the same. We don't need that extra cover there, and especially with the Basuma that was to come in. And if I do agree that Basuma is coming in, then a Granit Xhaka no longer becomes the progressor. And this has been my major point, that Thomas Partey takes over progression reins. And in that case, you facilitate it with the Basuma. And by the way, with a Lokonga and a kind of a Granit Xhaka, that partnership, I can see that as a secondary pivot very well. And so really it's a formation issue for me. See with the 4-2-3-1, especially in build-up, how you fit in a Granit Xhaka type in there, particularly if you have on-rushing fullbacks both sides, not on one. Because remember last season we've done it to invert the right back, where it was very clear in that Chelsea performance we weren't. So if that's the plan A going forward, in order to facilitate that, I think it's a formation issue for me. So yeah, I'm going to stick to my Basuma guns.
You're gonna down that hill, aren't you, George? I'm starting to ditch you. I'm starting to come down off that hill.
No, do you know what? You gotta speak it into existence. You gotta speak it into existence. Don't. Come on, George. Let's speak it. Come on.
Exactly.
Here's my prediction, you guys. And again, the prediction is not what I want to happen. It's what I believe will happen based on what I know and I've seen and guessing. Ramsdale comes in as a number 2, but really as competition for Leno. I think this link has legs to it, not because it makes sense from a profile perspective, because it won't go away. And I do believe Sheffield will give up and they'll give us what we want. I think we're desperate for it. Reports have come out that Arteta wants Ramsdale. It's not just like this thing. Arteta really wants him. I believe he comes in and not even just as a number 2, but I think he comes in and then he, in 2 years, becomes the replacement for Leno. I really do. I think that that's the plan. He's homegrown. A lot of goalkeeping experts and people that know things about goalkeepers say that he's like top level. There are people, obviously, in the chat that are probably cussing me at the moment, saying Ramsdale isn't better keeper than Johnstone, just get Sam. But the reality is Johnstone is 28 and Ramsdale is 23. And again, like my whole thing is to add perspective to things. We can always debate whether or not this is like if we want this player or not. But the reality is like you have to think just a level deeper. And he's 23 and goalkeepers don't hit their prime until they're 28. So we're really kind of pitting them up against people that are in a different bracket. And I would just say at 23 years old, see what Allison was doing, see what Ederson was doing, see what these goalkeepers that we really like, what they were doing at 23. It's very rare to find a goalkeeper of his age playing for Premier League clubs, albeit they do get relegated. But you don't just get relegated because you're your keeper. Your defense is crap. Now, my biggest issue with this is the price. Ultimately, if we could get Ramsdale in as a number 2 for significantly less, I don't think it would be that much of a big deal. But I feel like the issue with it really, there's 2 issues. Are we going to be able to address the other holes that we have? Are we going to end the transfer window with Ben White and Ramsdale and some backup players and nothing else? I think that's the anxiety of the majority of the fan base, is that the priorities are not aligned with what the fan base feels like are the priorities. And then there's more George's concern. Although he may be a good shot stopper, a good goalkeeper, have a lot of potential, does he hit the mark in terms of playing the ball out of the back? And if he cannot do that, then what's the point of bringing him in? But that being said, I still believe this gets done, and we will be perplexed to the end of the season trying to figure out why we're doing this, because we don't always know what the club is thinking. I mean, I think we could have all said that we didn't want Willian last season, and they still did it. So just because we don't want things to happen doesn't mean that they're not going to come to fruition. But that's what I think is going to happen. Do you guys hate me?
Yes, very much.
Okay.
I never hate you, but
yes,
I'm disappointed in you. I'm not upset. I'm disappointed. I think, look, the Ramsdale thing, and for competition for Leno, I don't get it at all. Even if you are going to tell me that there's potential, there's yada yada, you're betting on the future. I've got a homegrown keeper at home that we just promoted in Arthur Okonkwo, who has the potential argument, who is homegrown, who fits even in terms of profile, is more complete than a Ramsdale right now. He's not better, but in profile is complete. He actually can play with the ball at his feet. And so if you're looking at a project signing, for me, I've never understood it. I'm going to back my theory even with the Onana thing, where I don't believe he can ever demand a first team position missing 35% of the season. I just don't think factually you can demand that to any team. Forget Arsenal. In terms of Lyon, whatever, you cannot factually expect your number one to miss 35% of the season that you know of, forgetting injuries, forgetting the fact that he could get injured himself. He factually misses that guaranteed. I don't think there's a keeper, even a purchase, by the way, on the market where somebody has bought somebody that's missed 35% of the season out of the gate, knowing that and demanding first spot, not just goalkeeper, but any position. So, yeah, I don't hate you, but I hate Aaron.
On that point, right? It's like Onana will know the situation before the talks even happen. He knows at the minute Leno's going to be number one. He knows that coming in, so he's obviously accepted it, or the promise of Leno's going to be sold at the end of next window. It's one or the other, and I think for the fact that he's only going to cost us, what is it, £7 million or whatever it is,
max.
Yeah, at the most, someone who basically fits the entire profile of what Arteta wants to do. There isn't. Oh, does he fit? No, he can play out the back. He's a good goalkeeper.
He's a sweeper keeper on a high line. He can play that.
He's 25, so he's young.
He's young.
Yeah. But the thing is, like Ramsdale, you're still questioning yourself. You're like, so what are we doing? We're replacing the problem with a problem. We're replacing the same problem with the same problem. It doesn't do anything. It's annoying. I don't like it. I don't want to even. I don't even want to believe. Even if it happens, I'm gonna be like, nah, you don't play for us. Just not even gonna contemplate it.
And by the way, he hasn't even played for a year. Like, here, let me give you this. It's not even just forget the Onana and a goalkeeper. Yeah. I'm going to tell you there's a young center mid that we're looking to recruit. He's been out for a year because of family personal issues. And right now we know that he can't play because he gets injured on average 2 to 3 months out of the season. Are you logically going to tell me I would count on that type of center mid to lead us for a full season? Or are you getting back up to that type of player? I think in every situation, forget the name. If you knew those factors going in, you could not demand first team position the team. In fact, forget Marseille, forget Arsenal, top six, whatever. A Burnley wouldn't guarantee that because it's not financially feasible. And so for me, that's really where my logic lies on it. It's not even so much the links, because I think everybody knows I don't really pay attention to links. Even when I got my links for Baku, everyone's like, oh, are we linked to Baku? No, guys, I just scouted and I love him. And that's why I want him. But
I think people want him to come in now because of you.
That's my fault. I'm sorry.
No, but also think about it like this. What makes a better chant, Onana or Ramsdale? Like, there's not really a lot you can do with Ramsdale, but Onana is already a chant. You know what I mean? Like the vibe, the whole thing is phenomenal because the Premier League's atmosphere is so dead. We're trying to bring it back up. So bringing Onana in, there's one chant already. Let's start chanting.
And by the way, the last thing I'll say, we all know that Leno is going to be leaving next summer because he hasn't signed his contract extension that was offered in March. And based on the fact that we don't do that after 2 years and we clearly look to sell, there's no market for him. He's absolutely going to go. So the idea of there being a spot that he can't, for me, is kind of, it's not logical even because he can't demand first team position in this season. That's impossible. But the following season, in 1 year left of his contract, we aren't giving him another one. He's going to be sold. And if he does want to wait to kind of run out his contract Lacazette style, that's totally fine. Like, he can be backup and there's no reason for it. I think fundamentally it's a bad financial decision. And I would only look at Ramsdale as confirmation. We have that 40 million pot plus the marquee again. That's what I take from those signings. So play within your limits and that what you want. And that's before sales, by the way, because we made those bids and interest, by the way, of a Martinez who's quoted at 67 million pounds. So again, what I take from the Martinez is not we're looking for a striker. That's how I decipher these links. So if I'm looking at the Martinez, it's not so much we're getting a striker. It's, okay, if you want a marquee signing, that's the limit. That's the upper limit that you're willing to spend. If you wanted a center mid, Locatelli, bid 40 million confirmed. That's the upper limit of a center mid we are willing to do. And we didn't have sales at those points. So that's my fund logic. and then any sales that we do helps us do things more.
We'll see, you guys. We'll see. I mean, we'll see.
Join me.
I'll be honest though, like now that we are getting closer to the end of the transfer window and obviously ever closer to the start of the Premier League season. And for me, it's more about the midfield than anything. I know a backup goalkeeper or some sort of goalkeeper will come in, so I'm not necessarily too worried about that. But I would just say that I would be okay with some sort of marquee signing midfielder to come in, because I think that improves us exponentially. There's some players or some positions that improve you more than others. Some people are saying that it's definitely right back. And I know that we just don't want to see Hector Bellerin running up and down the side anymore. I get that. But I'm telling you, a midfielder would change our fortunes. I really do believe that. So if at the very least we brought in a midfielder, I'd be happy. But I do think that the way that the window was kind of, it was kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but I know at some point Arteta said it's going to go boom. It ain't booming yet. Like, I need to, it doesn't feel like it's going to boom. Like, you know what I mean? So we'll see. Again, I'm just tempering my expectations because, again, I start to change how I feel about things as the facts become more clear. And I just feel maybe I was a little bit too like thinking, okay, we could do it, because now I'm not sure we're going to sell some of the players that I felt like we would. But again, bring in a good midfielder, somebody like a James Maddison, and maybe one more, that would be awesome. For you guys, bare minimum, midfield, do you have to have the right back? Do you have to have a striker? What is it? Like
right back, no. I need another center midfielder. And by the way, if it's not Bissouma and we do get another goalkeeper, which I do think we need to get, I've always felt 40 million plus the marquee. So if my marquee is James Maddison, I would supplement maybe with like a Sam Johnston plus a Boubacar Kamara from Olympique Marseille. That equals 40 million pounds in total. He's no more than 15 or 20 million pounds in the last year of his contract. So I do expect, and I'll boldly say, if we don't address another center mid, I'm going to be critiquing the club. I don't find an excuse there. You can get your Boubacar Kamara for 15 million pounds, or you can go bigger and get your Bissouma. I don't really care, but you have to get another kind of person in the back there. Otherwise, we are short. And I do think our projection of where we're going to be is going to be impacted without a center mid plus a backup and that marquee attacking mid. Right back, I'm not too fussed. I think we can get away with what we got. Obviously, I want more, and I want Baku. But if 40 million is my choice, I want to use it to address more positions than just the Baku, for example. So, yeah.
Sulz, bare minimum, just really quick, like, what do you think has to happen, like, to improve us? There's exponential improvement, and then there's improvement. What is the bare minimum to keep us from being 8th again?
That's the problem. Unless we don't get a midfielder, number 10, and a right back, we probably the best we can see with just a midfielder, maybe number 10, is top 6. So it's a slight jump in improvement. But I really don't see us being top 4 this season, regardless of what the business we do. But if you're looking at, okay, getting to Europa League, you need a number 10, a central midfielder, and obviously you need a backup goalkeeper, because you never know with goalkeeper, especially with the fact that Leno's had that injury. I know he's not been injured again since Brighton, but the fact that he's got that, you never know. It can always trigger again. So you always need someone there just in case. Touch wood. But if you're talking about top 4, then yeah, you need that right back, and you're probably going to need a striker as well at a bare minimum before you can really make a push for top 4. But I'd be happy with the number 10 or a creative midfielder and a centre mid. And like I said, I think we can get by with what we have at right back in terms of Chambers. I think is fine. I've not got a real big problem. Yes, in the future we do need to get better, but till January or to the end of the season, it'll do. So yeah,
Bissouma and Maddison gets you top 4, by the way. If we were to get those two, 100%. I don't think we need a right back. Those two is enough of a jump to give us, which by the way was only 6 points of a difference. Kamara would be a jump. If we went with the Kamara route, it was slightly. I love him, but it would be I wouldn't be confident as I am with Basuma. You get me Basuma and Maddison, I'll shout it from the windows. We're getting top 4 easy. But Kamara, I love him, by the way. Huge ceiling, and long term better than Basuma, but a shout for top 4 with him.
All right. Well, there you have it. And I have written. I've written. Oh my gosh. So I've written all of these down, and we will reconvene at the end of the transfer window as we grade the window and have people, you guys will be able to come on. It'll be a phone-in show. You guys can let us know how you feel about how the window went. We'll go over our predictions, say who got things right, who got things wrong. Spoiler alert, I will get everything right, probably, most likely, so George and Sulz will be eating crow. And then, and I'll get Harry's predictions as well, and we'll add his in when we come back. So yeah, you guys, I'll be back tomorrow at some point in the day. I won't be able to do a show on Wednesday, but tomorrow I will be back. So yep, talk to you guys later. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Really enjoyed you guys today. Talk to you later. Bye guys.